Welcome, everybody. We're thrilled, like I said, to have you here. We come to you through our program in the University of California, Division of Ag and Natural Resources. We're the Informatics and GIS group. And we do these workshops sort of monthly on different topics. And today we're going to launch into ArcGIS Pro, which is one of our favorite software packages, extremely powerful and a lot of fun. So that's what we're going to do. But before we get started on the workshop, I did want to tell you a little bit about us and who we are. I know a lot of you are coming to this from the UC Data Love Data Week, and you might not know about University of California Division of Agricultural and Natural Resources. That's who we're all part of. And this is an entity under the University of California that's dedicated to connecting UC research to California communities. And we do this in a lot of different ways, but one of the ways we do it is through statewide programs like CalFresh or 4-H or California Naturalist Program or UC Integrated Pest Management, all of these wonderful research and extension entities that have people distributed throughout the state in cooperative extension offices, at counties, on research and extension centers, and on affiliated UC campuses. And our group, which is called the Informatics and GIS program, is one of these statewide programs. And we're dedicated to helping you integrate spatial data and spatial analysis into your work. So we're really excited that you're joining us today. And this is who we are in particular. You're going to hear from me, Maggie Kelly. I'm the director of the Informatics and GIS group. I'm a professor and specialist based at the UC Berkeley campus. Sean Hogan, who you just met briefly, he's a PhD from UC Davis. He now works in Davis. He's our remote sensing and GIS expert. He's going to walk you through the hands-on portion of the workshop. And then behind the scenes, you'll have Shane Fire, Robert Johnson, and Andy Lyons. So they're there. You can reach out and chat if you're having trouble. We want this to be a rewarding experience for all of you. So don't hesitate. If you have a question, you need something, that something's not going right, reach out and we'll do our best. I know we had high hopes this would be all remote desktop, but we're going to roll with it. And so who you are, to get us started, we make a map of who you are, and we've got a great turnout from California. We've also got some folks who registered from around the world, but just to let us know who you are, if you would be so kind, if you would put in the chat who you are, get my chat window here, your name, if you want to just say what you want to learn, but if you don't care to share that, that's fine. And then your experience with ArcGIS Pro, 1 being beginner and 5 being expert. So let's start this roll call. Who's some brave soul, reach out and let us know. Awesome. Thank you, Diana. Great. Love it. Anybody else want to share where they're at? Awesome. GIS for health research. Yeah, that's very powerful. Yeah. Alex. Oh, great. Linguistics. Great. Love it. Wonderful. Ooh, you guys are going so fast. I can't read them. I love this. This is terrific. Back in the workforce, biology 1. Terrific. We've got some 2s and 3s and some 1s. Wonderful. Flood risk, social vulnerability. Good. School of Public Health. Sean, I know that feeling too. Great. So this is terrific. Like I said, we all love this software package. It's a big and complex one. And as you can see, if you read through that chat roll call, all the different applications, from biology to flood mapping, disaster response, public health. That's the beauty of GIS. You can do so much impactful work with spatial data and spatial analysis, and that's really what we're here for. So if you're one of the people who have put down a 1 or a 0, have no fear. We're going to get you up to speed today. So keep that rolling if you care to. I'm going to keep going on my slides. So you're all here to learn about Pro, and I've said it several times, it's a wonderful but very complex software package. So why are you here to learn about Pro? Well, what Pro does very well is it allows you to create publication quality maps. It allows fine control over design and cartography, and we're going to talk about that at the end. It allows you to have some real good control over your projection, your spatial projection. And I'm going to do a couple of slides in the slideshow here that talk about projections, but those are basically the mathematical transformation of the Earth as a 3D object to a flat map. So there has to be some tricky math that stretches a 3D object into a 2D object. And because the Earth isn't perfect, it's a little bit fussy. I'll introduce that. Mostly, though, you want to use Pro because there's so many things you can do. You can do image processing with remotely sensed imagery. You can do spatial modeling like site suitability modeling or hydrologic modeling. You can pull in multiple data types. You can look at, as we're going to do in the workshop today, elevation models, remotely sensed data. You can pull in LiDAR or drone data. You can work in a reproducible way if you care to, and you can work in a coding environment. And just incidentally, we will be having our ArcGIS Pro with Jupyter Notebooks workshop next month. And so if you are interested after today to learn how to take your Pro analytical power a little bit farther, please stay tuned for that. It doesn't do everything, though. ArcGIS Pro has some challenges. There's a steep learning curve. It's really it's a deep collection of analytical routines. So there can be a steep learning curve to work with it completely. And that's not what we're going to do today. We're just going to get you started. Some of the more advanced reproducibility work will require you to learn a little bit of Python. And again, we are going to have a workshop on that coming up next month. It's not the most nimble of software. It can be a bit of a bear to install, as you're going to see. It's not free, but despite all these challenges, we do love it, and it's a lot of fun. So what we're going to do today is we're on the left-hand side of the screen. I'm going to give what I'm doing right now is this intro, a few slides about the context of this software, a little bit about the basics of GIS, data, projections, analysis, design, and then I'm going to introduce you to what we're going to do in the workshop, and we're going to be focusing on one of our UCANR research and extension centers, Lynn Cove in the Central Valley. It's a great place. And then we're going to switch over to Sean, and he's going to go through orienting you to the software, to the data. We're going to do some basic stuff and then get a little bit deeper on some of the analytical resources that ArcGIS Pro has to offer. So I think it's going to be terrific. So a lot of you are starting out with GIS or GIS curious, I heard. So we'll just do a few basics here. So GIS stands for Geographical Information System, and a typical definition of a GIS is some kind of software package that can be used to acquire, to manage, to analyze, and to disseminate geospatial data. And geospatial data is just data that has a location with it. It has an X and a Y that's referenced to latitude and longitude on the surface of the Earth. And we take the complex world and we sort of split it into these two-dimensional layers that I have demonstrated here on the right. We can have location of houses or location of trees of interest. We can have roads or routes or hydrology. We can have polygons like parcel data or zip codes. We can have imagery. We can have surfaces like elevation. And the power of GIS is because all of these have a common reference system, and that common reference system is the geolocation. It's the latitude and longitude. It's the place on the earth, so that you can drop a pin down through those layers, and you always are, everything is tied to that coordinate. And so that means we can take all of those layers and pull them back together again and do some powerful spatial analysis, understand things like context or adjacency or flow or all of these kinds of analyses that depend on space. And then we can make beautiful cart products through cartography and design. So that's GIS in a nutshell. And at the base, the basic thing we have to talk about with GIS is the data. And so in the GIS world, we typically talk about GIS data as vector and raster. And vector data are points, lines, and polygons. Raster data are grids. Vector data are, like I say, points, lines, and polygons. Your basic entity is a point. Points can be connected to create lines. Lines can be connected to create polygons. Every single point carries with it its spatial information. That's why we say spatial information is explicit. Every point carries its location. Raster data, on the other hand, the fundamental element of raster data is a grid cell or a pixel. And that data is organized essentially as arrays or a matrix of similar cells. Each cell has a value. Raster data can have different bands stacked together. You can have fine resolution raster or coarse resolution raster. Each cell doesn't carry with it, isn't tagged with its spatial location. Spatial information is implicit. It's all has to do with where you are in rows and columns, which means you can do a lot of stuff a lot faster with raster data, but it can, depending on what you need, it can be a little bit less precise. But neither one of these is correct or right. You're going to be working with raster data, and you're going to be working with vector data, and you're going to be going back and forth. So vector data examples: points, sample locations, trees, centroids, addresses. Lines can be transportation, hydrography, contours. Polygons can be land use, census tracts, fire perimeters. These are not exhaustive lists. Raster data examples: elevation or digital elevation models, remotely sensed data, so imagery from satellites or drones, land use data classified from remote sensing, giving you land cover values. And then increasingly, we're using downscaled climate models. And you'll see here that all of these different data sets have different resolutions. That's just the size of the grid cell. And you can find fine resolution elevation and coarse resolution elevation. And so this will start to be clear when you start playing around with data. But those are the fundamentals: raster data, vector data. They're different, and you can do different things with each one of them. So the software that we're going to be introducing today and working with is ArcGIS Pro. ArcGIS Pro is an Esri software. Esri, ESRI, is a company that makes, it's the largest GIS company in the world. They make ArcGIS Pro. They also have created a cloud-based platform called ArcGIS Online. And these two things work very well together. ArcGIS Pro is on your desktop, so it's local. You're doing your work locally. ArcGIS Online, you're doing your work in the cloud. And you go back and forth between these. Today, we're focusing on Pro, although we are going to reach out to the cloud to grab some data sets. And so increasingly, we think of these as linked and sort of working together. And like I said, today we're going to focus on Pro, but as you get more into this, you'll see how you can kind of go back and forth. And indeed, we do have workshops on ArcGIS Online to get you started there. And so the strengths of ArcGIS Online, just so we can put everything in context, this is where you would create web maps, web apps. You would link to lots of apps like field maps if you wanted to create a form to go out in the field and collect data as you're walking or hiking or in your field plot. There's some simple analysis, but more is on the way. It's fast, it's intuitive, it's browser-based. I love it. That's not what we're going to do today. Today, we're going to work on in ArcGIS Pro. The strengths of Pro are, like I said before, cartography and design, projection control, and this advanced analysis, image processing, spatial modeling, all these sorts of things. But wherever you are in Pro or ArcGIS Online, you're going to have access to loads of data. And that's been a real game changer in the last 5 years, I would say, in the GIS world. And we're going to give you a taste of that in the workshop today. A little bit of a background then about local versus cloud. When we are on the desktop, we are using local data. Sometimes we're pulling cloud data down, but local data are things like these traditional GIS data formats like the geodatabase, the shapefile, the grid. If you haven't heard of these, don't worry. These are traditional local file formats that have been in the GIS world for a while. And they are, we sort of send them around to each other as zipped up files. But increasingly in the GIS world and in other technologies, we're reaching into the cloud. And when you talk about cloud GIS data, you're not talking about these file formats like the shapefile. You're talking about cloud native formats. And in the GIS world, these are termed layers and services. And layers are the data and the symbology, like a vector layer or a raster layer. And the services are how that data can be used. So sometimes people will publish a data layer that says, all you can do with this layer is look at it. You can, add it to your project, but you can't change it. But or alternatively, people might publish a layer and say, have at it. You can do whatever you want with it. So you're going to encounter both of these types, local data and cloud data in lab today. Went too fast. Another thing we have to touch on are projections. And like I said at the outset, Pro does a great job on projection control. And the background of projections are from left to right. We've got our super complex, weirdly shaped Earth. It's not a perfect sphere. It's kind of lumpy. So the first step in modeling that is to model it as a geoid. And this is a mathematical structure. It's a little bit less lumpy than the real world. Then we take that geoid and we model it as a clean, platonic ellipsoid that has a very simple formula for it. And because, you're sort of introducing a little bit of error at every step of the way, we tend to have different projection systems for different portions of the Earth. And those projection systems require the ellipsoid, and then they require something called a datum. And all that does is it ties the map, the 2D coordinate system, X's and Y's, down to that modeled Earth in that region. So a projection in the GIS world has a coordinate system, the X's and Y's. It has a datum, which is that reference between, that modeled Earth and the ellipsoid. And then it has an ellipsoid. What that means for California, where we're going to be working today, is there are some standard projections that are available for use in California. There are, and you'll encounter all of these if you get into the GIS arena. There's the simplest, which is called geographic, which really isn't a projection. It just is a simple XY, 1 degree in longitude equals 1 degree in latitude. So your X's and your Y's are, the same. And you can see that that would be a problem immediately if you were looking at, a big region, because of course, latitude and longitude vary as you go around, as you move north on the Earth. So you still do see people working in geographic, but it's not really recommended for analysis. The next really common one you're going to encounter is called California Albers, or California Teal Albers. And this is a California-wide projection. A lot of statewide data is provided in California Teal Albers, and it's a perfectly fine data set to work in. Another common one that you're going to encounter is UTM, Universal Transverse Mercator. And this is a projection system that's been designed for the entire Earth, and it splits the Earth into strips, north-south. And in California, we have 2 of those strips. We have a zone 10 and zone 11. This is a great one to work with. It's one of our favorite projection systems. There's also something called state plane. And in the US, every state has its own projection system. It splits each state up into these smaller zones. In California, we have 7 state plane zones. These are typically used, this projection system is typically used by surveying professionals and local municipalities because it's the smallest, it's the most accurate actually. And then the final one you're going to encounter is Web Mercator, which is this is optimized for web mapping, and it's not ideal for analysis because it does some of that distortion as you get larger scale. So those are what you're going to commonly encounter. And when this is of concern to you, you want to be working in Pro. All right, this is a big slide, but I just want to touch on all the things we can do with GIS. This is where, this is what you want to be thinking about with all of your various case studies and interests that you have out there. You're going to be wanting to work with data, to collect data, to work on data wrangling. You're going to want to do various vector analyses. You're going to want to do various raster analyses, including all this modeling stuff I mentioned before. And then you're going to want to do great cartography and design. All of this is GIS. And what we're going to do today is we're going to work at the Lynn Cove Research and Extension Center. This is in the south of Fresno in the Central Valley. It's a research and extension center. It has a lot of work on citrus and citrus varietals. As I said, it's part of the UCANR. We've flown over it with drones. We've been working there for a while collecting data, so we're going to share some of that with you. So what you're going to be working with today, you're going to be working with digital elevation models. You're going to be working with points, a point layer that shows locations of trees, and then a table that shows information about those trees. You're going to do some work to bring those together. You're going to look at imagery. You're going to look at these surface models, and you're going to do a lot of playing around with all of these kinds of data. What it's going to look like, this is what Pro is going to look like for you when you get it running. It's, as I said, it's a really comprehensive software package, and Sean's going to give you an intro before we even get started on hands-on stuff. But basically, this top of you have this ribbon at the top. That's where all the analytical power is. On the left-hand side, this is your table of contents. On the right-hand side, this is where your catalog, where you're going to be finding and organizing data. And then you're going to have a map pane in the middle. You can rearrange all of these things, but this is a basic look. And again, Sean's going to go over this again with you. And then the GIS tasks that you'll be doing today, you're going to find and load data, both locally from local sources and the cloud. You're going to play around. You're going to be doing some symbolization, turning layers on and off. You're going to join this point file to this tabular data. You're going to do some querying and searching. You're going to do some interpolation, which means taking points and creating a surface from them. And then you're going to be making a fancy map. And that fancy map thing is what I want to close with, because I got into this business through love of maps and making maps. And making the cartography and design is really where ArcGIS Pro shines. So this guy on the lower left, this is Kenneth Field. He's the cartography guru at Esri, and he does some great, he and a bunch of other colleagues do some great MOOCs on cartography. But one of his key messages is always go beyond the defaults. You can really dig into the design elements here. And on the right-hand side, this is not a great map. This is an example of accept all the defaults map and really not having any particular style. And I asked John to create a terrible map, and he actually struggled with it because we all like making good maps. But you know, this would be something where you didn't really put a lot of thought into the overall composition. And with a little bit more work, you can really make a lovely product. You know, you can work on the legend, you can get the overall balance and focus right. You can put a nice inset map. You can, you know, have your typography all very harmonious. So it's just a reminder to pay attention at all steps of the GIS workflow. Think about your data, think about your analysis, and think about your product output. Okay, so again, if you're having any trouble, reach out in the chat. I haven't been checking the chat, so I'm going to do that now. And if we, during breaks, we're going to have breaks throughout the afternoon. If there's anything important, we'll be sending it out via email, but we'll also make announcements when we come back. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Sean.
Great, thank you. As always, that was a perfect introduction to what we're doing and a good overview. And some of the stuff that we'll be going into now will make more sense because of that. That was yeah, excellent. The let me share my screen before I forget. So a couple little things. We always want to do a little bit of housekeeping right at the beginning because from past reviews, from our post-workshop evaluation reviews, we like to take your comments and really improve every workshop a little bit at a time. And a couple of the suggestions that we've had over time was maybe give give some recommendations on how to set your screen up or your windows specifically, because we only have so much real estate on our computers, especially if we're on a laptop, and it makes it a little bit difficult to both see the zoom when I'm doing hands-on stuff, you actually working on your own ArcGIS Pro session, and then sometimes referring to the directions. So again, there's a number of things there to work with. So what I tend to recommend is to take the exercise directions and put them all the way over to the left side of your screen and let it sit there. Then in the middle portion of the screen is where you might bring up your ArcGIS Pro workshop. And I got to move some of my zoom bars out of the way just so I can get to moving things the way that I want them, but have that a little bit to the side so I can toggle between one and the other, maybe leafed a little bit up and down, and then find a spot where you can put your zoom as well. Usually I recommend putting the zoom over the top of the exercise directions over to the left. Tends to because you either want to be looking at the zoom or you want to be looking at the exercise directions. You don't usually need to be looking at both of those at the same time. So that's just one suggestion. The another thing is if it looks like everybody's come out of the breakout room, so hopefully everybody's software is set up on their computers now. There's if you have any trouble, we still have a little bit of time while I go over some of the buttons and levers. And this first part of what I'll cover will be really, it'll just be an introduction, pointing out, okay, this is how the application is set up. And so so you then know a little, you have a little bit more clarity when you're going through the exercise and we say, click on the explore button, for example, you might have a little bit of memory to, oh yeah, okay, that's right, that's that button I mentioned there. I know from past experience from working with GIS and remote sensing softwares over the time, sometimes that one click away. It takes you hours to find if you're doing it on your own. So if you have any questions with that, put your questions in the chat. We have a great team here that will help you out, and you will, and yeah, there's no, there really are no dumb questions when it comes to this, because no one's born with the knowledge of GIS, nor all the acronyms and so forth that we'll talk about here. So I'll try to kind of keep the lingo to more common, but if I do say something it doesn't seem clear, then then just go ahead and throw it in the chat and we can help out. And then sometimes we'll have breakouts that speaking or have breaks. That's another suggestion from past evaluations, is that people like to have maybe well, we can jump off like for almost an hour on the first part, but then having more breaks so you don't feel like you're driving in the fog or getting fire hosed with too much information. You have time to kind of reset, and during those periods we can unmute and ask questions. So without further ado, let's talk about the application, and I want to show you where we're going to be going with this. And I already have ArcGIS Pro up here. I'm going to spread it all the way across the screen here. And starting off with that terrible map that Maggie just showed you, and she was right, it was challenging to come up with this because my mind rejected the idea of making such an ugly map, but it's hilarious. I've seen maps like this sometimes that float around, and one of the key elements of a map is trying to make the things that are most important stand out. And in this case, I would say, why is the north arrow so important? Why is the legend just blindingly like ugly and weird in the center? The important stuff, you can't even tell what the coloring, everything is wrong. But what we will be working toward today will be a nice clean map, something very much like this. And we'll and by the end of the workshop, I think you'll have something that resembles this very closely. But on the way to getting to that point, I'm going to go through a whole bunch of different steps that won't be reflected in this map, because I want a lot of the things that the way we frame our workshops often is to try to deliver as much of the information that we wish that we had when we first started doing GIS. But that's a lot of information. If we went through every last step in the exercise, which I'll get to in a few minutes, this would be a 5-hour workshop instead of a 3-hour workshop. So we can't include everything, but we can include the directions in the exercise, and then select areas that were just optional that we can move past, so we can get to this final stage without having to work with the digital surface models, for example. But anyhow, so when it comes to the application, this ArcGIS Pro is contextual. I don't know how many of you have worked with the traditional ArcMap or ArcMap desktop, but Pro takes a different approach with the layout of the application. And part of this is that it has, I'm going to go to the original map, the base map. There's a contextual ribbon across the top when you get working. You'll have a project tab at the top. And in here, you'll have some various options and information that we don't really need to get into today. Licensing is sometimes important because some groups' licenses don't cover everything. That's one of the reasons why we suggest that you get a license from IGIS, is because our licenses pretty much cover every step you might need in the exercise. So occasionally an organization doesn't have all of their extensions activated, in which case some steps in the exercises don't work. But so just to point out some of the things here, you have the save and the save as here, which there's also redundantly, those two buttons are at the the buttons at the very top left-hand corner of your screen, if you can see that in the Zoom. Save often, frequently is great. Usually I recommend to do so before any kind of analytical step, because if something breaks in the analysis, then you can go back to right before that. ArcGIS Pro doesn't crash like it used to. At least it hasn't crashed on me in quite a while, but at first I could crash it 10 times, 20 times a day. But they've worked out most of those bugs. But having saving is nice. But also what's neat about ArcGIS Pro, as of about last year, this time, they made it so it automatically saves in the background, kind of like Microsoft Word, for example. So very nice addition there. So again, back to the contextual ribbon across the time, or contextual tab. So you got your project, your map, you have insert, you have analysis, and I'll explain what each one of these do in a moment. But you have these different tabs. Well, one of the things when you go to your map tab, you'll have different options that are available depending on what data is selected over here in your contents pane. When I refer to a pane, it's this little section off, usually on the side of your screen. If I bring there might be a catalog pane that you'll see over on the far right as well. The contents pane will have all of the data or map data that you have included in your project. And if I, for example, have clicked on field 64 West, then I have options for feature layers that are available. However, if I scroll down here and I find a raster layer and click on that, the contextual ribbon on the top will change because it relates just to that type of data there. There's, I know Maggie, she touched on some of the differences or information about vectors or versus rasters in her part of the presentation. But yeah, you can see how this works here in practice when you're working with, say, a raster layer, that you have different symbology or stylization options versus something like a polygon or a point, which will have each of which will have different kind of ways that you can approach both analysis and visualization. So that's what I refer to with contextual ribbon. When you click on one, it comes up here. The same thing happens too if you have symbology tab open on the side, and I can maybe do that if I click on right click. That one's turned off. Let's find this and go to the properties. And we can see some of the information there that that will tell you a little bit about the layer. Sorry, I got sidetracked. I want to go to style of that layer, then I have to click. What the heck? Am I frozen? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. My computer seems to be, it's not letting me. Oh, my ArcGIS Pro froze up. There we go.
Just when you were saying how well behaved it was.
It was actually my fault. There was a little tab that was underneath my my Zoom window that I couldn't see that was open. So anyways, that was my fault. Zoom window covered something up that I didn't see. Okay, so I digress. So if I go to the feature layer and I want to look at the symbology pane will show up on the right-hand side. If I were to go to a raster layer and click this, the symbology pane on the right side would change as well. Again, it's everything's contextual. Most of the time you'll be working in the map tab. An important button to know is the explore button. The reason I say it's important to know is because a lot of times you'll end up clicking on some other tool, for example, the select tool, and I go over and I select something, and then I want to scroll around, but I can't anymore. Like I can't move my map around the way I would like. You can go back and click on explore, and it frees your project back up so you can get back to work. So if you ever need to get out of a tool that's limiting what you want to do, go back, click on explore, and it'll get you out of that. There's other options in here. There's the previous extent. So say if I move out and I click the extent, it'll jump me back. You can set bookmarks, go to base map. We're not going to really work with this much today, but what I can do is I can put in a different base map into my map. So if I like hybrid imagery, for example, I could put that in. There's 28 different options here, and there's other ways that you can get, actually there's more. They added now there's 30 options. They're always adding different base layers. So that's background imagery. I have the background imagery turned off right now though. We can play with that in a bit. Adding data, that's one of the first things that we'll do after the hour. There's a couple ways to do that, and I'll show you what the two options, and well, there's more than two options, but my two preferred ways of doing it. Selection tools, so you can have selection where you can select different areas to work with or visualize or look at the attributes of that information. You can clear those selections, and then there's other measurement tools and so forth. Insert, this is an important one that we'll use for creating new maps. So as you can see across the top of the map window, or across the center window, you have different tabs down below. So there's a primary map, there's a call out map that I've created, there's a layout. The way that you create a new one of each of these is by clicking new map or new layout to add these tabs into your project. That's one of the neat things about ArcGIS Pro as opposed to the older ArcMap, is that now you can have many different layouts and many different maps all within one project. And it is that it adds kind of like another dimension to your mapping ability. So those are the two key ones there. We'll also add a folder connection very soon too with the insert. Analysis, that's important. There's a bunch of different analysis options that are shortcuts and easy up here, but the one that we use all the time is the toolbar. So we click on the toolbox here, and what that'll bring up is a geoprocessing toolbox, or geoprocessing pane over to the right. And there's a couple ways that you can go about finding your tools, and you can actually look in the toolbox, but this is cumbersome. There's so many different boxes, and finding the exact tool you want is challenging sometimes. So what I always prefer, and granted I know what the names of the tools I want are, I can just search for them here. So if I wanted to do a buffer, or if I wanted to do a clip, I'll just type in clip, raster maybe, and then it'll give the first option there. Just something to note is that if you're not sure what tool you're looking for, you can get on Google and search ArcGIS Pro, how do I clip something? And they'll usually lead you to the keyword search that you need very quickly. So there's a lot of information that you can find there, and then just use that for find the tool that you're looking for. Good. View, this is important, the view tab, because sometimes things happen, like we will accidentally, for example, close our contents, and you really want to see your contents most of the time. So if you go to the view tab, you can click on contents and bring it back up. The same thing with your catalog pane. That's now, I actually have it leafed to the right side, but I can click on that to bring it up. This is another redundant way of getting to the geoprocessing toolbox, and a bunch of these other cool tools here too. So there's how using the view is very handy. Edit, we won't be doing too much of this, or I don't think we'll get to this today because it takes extra time. There is a description of how to do editing within the directions, but just to show you what that's all about. If I want to edit, I can go to a layer, click on it here, and it makes it available to edit. And then I can create, modify that particular layer there. I can just, as long as it's highlighted, I can go in and say I want to click on one of the, or actually I have to set on modify. But I can go in and start modifying those points in that layer. Moving on, imagery. So if I have an image in here that's highlighted, then I'll have options for raster functions that are really neat, including a hill shade that we'll do in a little while, but other things like a normalized difference vegetation index or an NDVI. You can do all kinds of really quick raster functions now, much more easily than you could before. And then there's also classification tools that are available for you, which would be another workshop in itself. We'll skip the share, but then there is a little bit of other infographic information under the data tab. Good. That is kind of just the overview of the layout here. And I think I want to make sure that we don't run out of time in this workshop because it's very easy to do. Going into managing the data, which is what first we'll bring in data in the next half hour and just set your project up, get all the data in. There will be a little minimal amount of visualization and working with the data organization, but that primarily will be finding different ways to import your data into your map in the next half hour. Following that, we'll do some more visualization and some analysis. And then for the final part of the workshop, what we'll be doing is mostly cartography. And that's really one of the funnest things to do in this workshop, I believe. And I don't want to give us too little time for that. So with that, let's take a break until 2 p.m. And when we get back, we'll start loading data in and get your hands dirty with this really cool software. If you have any questions, now is a good time to ask. I'll go look at the chat, which I don't have up yet, but here you go. So 2 p.m. Okay, well, let's get moving again here. So when we get to the exercise, what you'll see here is that I mentioned before, there's optional sections, and I'll come across one that's highlighted here in a moment. Like where it says optional, those are things that we can skip past. You can refer back to those later if you want to, for example, learn how to do interpolation or learn how to clip a raster, as the case might be right here. But and when I go through the exercise, I like to kind of take off the sharp edges and do most of it by memory and kind of streamline it a little bit. So when we get to the end, some of the steps have already been kind of set up for you, and you don't have to spend a lot of time trying to symbolize things or stylize things. So that's so it'll make it easier there at the end. But anyhow, so let's get going with that here. And I'm going to show you what you need to do to bring up ArcGIS Pro. So what we'll do here is we'll go down you can use your search function. I already have mine bookmarked, but I'm going to just use search just so it's similar to what you have there. I just did this earlier just to check. But if you just start to type in ArcGIS Pro, the app will come up and you want to start a new session. When you initially come in, you'll probably need to log in if you haven't already. And so this will come up here. And what we'll do is we'll start a new map. When you start a new map, what will happen is you'll need to select a location, and don't accept just the default because it'll get buried down kind of like a keyhole in your documents folders. So what you'll want to do is click the folder and then go, excuse me, getting something out of the way here. So we go into find a folder location. We'll go to the C drive. And what I'd suggest is putting it in the same folder where your data went on your C drive. And I always recommend the C drive because most PCs, all of them have a C drive. And it's easily accessible and not deep down like under your user documents, that kind of thing. So what I suggest then is to select that new project location and click OK. And then name your project something relatively intuitive, such as ArcGIS GIS Pro workshop or exercise or something like that. I'll say exercise. One thing you'll notice about GIS folks is they tend to use underscores a lot. And in some cases, you really don't need to have that underscore. You can't have special characters a lot of the time, but you don't always need to have an underscore instead of a space. But we get used to doing that because there's certain processing steps and certain times when a space will break things. And so just by habit, you'll see most people don't put spaces in their file names or in some of their data columns and attributes and so forth. But once this is set up, then you'll click OK to create a new project. What'll happen there, it'll create a geodatabase that will be associated with this, the parent project file, the APRX extension file, for which will be your project. And that project then is kind of like a hub for organization of a bunch of related files. And those related files could be your vectors, they could be tabular data, they can be rasters, they could be a whole bunch of different things. Well, this project is then you'll want to save frequently, and you need to keep all of the relational positions of those files. For example, say you had a file folder full of vectors, that has to stay in a relative same position to your parent file, or else the map will break. So now, once we've started the project, the next thing that we'll want to do is get some data into the project. But before we do that, the way to make that easier by far is to add a folder connection. So across the top, if it's not already selected, you'd want to select the Insert tab and then click the Add Folder. Once you've selected Add Folder, you'll go down and navigate into it's already by default going to the last place I asked to add a folder to, but you might have to navigate using your options to C drive, double clicking to get there, and then down to the ArcGIS Pro workshop folder that you just selected, or where you put your data at, and click OK. The importance of this then is that once you have set up a folder position, then you can add data very easily. And the way you do that is if you go back to the Map tab at the top, this is the first way that you might do it, is go to the Add Data option, click on that. You can expand folders here and select the ArcGIS Pro Workshop folder to get to the data. Double click to get inside of it. I know it's a few deep, the way that it comes down in the download, but once you get all the way in there, you'll see all of these different files that you can select. The one that we'll want to put in first is the mosaic. So we'll double click on that, and inside that you'll see the 64 West Drone MS mosaic, and just click it once this time. Don't double click it. Otherwise you have to back up. So once you've clicked it once, you can click OK. So just if anybody got behind there, didn't catch that. So we're going to add data, navigate to the folders to where you put your data on the C drive, go down through the different levels until you get to mosaic and the 64 West drone. Click it once and then click OK. It'll take a moment for it to get in because it's a raster data set, but then it comes in. So one thing to know is that whatever you put into your project first is what dictates the projection of your project. If we looked at the directions, this isn't something maybe kind of important to note. If early on, you'll see a table of metadata, which is information or data about the data. And there we see different projection informations for each of the different layers. So some of them are the geographic coordinate system 84 that Maggie mentioned, and some of them are web Mercator because they're optimized for like something like Google Earth or ArcGIS Online, and some of them are in UTM. In this case, this layer here is a UTM, or Universal Transverse Mercator. It's important to know that because some analysis processing steps can give you bad results if you are trying to cross analysis between, say, a bunch of points and a raster, or between different files if they're not in the same coordinate system. I've heard stories of people like doing like months or years of work and then having something that they were basing their stuff on not work out for them because they started off with a mixed match projection system. But I digress. So going back to here, so we've got our first layer in, and by default, it'll zoom you to the layout level that of the layer that you brought in. Now let's bring in more layers of data from a number of sources. And this is one of the neat things about modern GIS as opposed to what it was like when all of us started many years ago, is that now it's really easy to get data. And I'll show you one way or two ways that you can do that in ArcGIS Pro that previously were kind of just left to like online mapping, but now you can do it in your in this desktop like software application. So the way that I prefer to do to bring my data in is through the catalog pane. And the way I do that to bring that up is I go to, you can do this, go to view, the tab at the top, then go down to catalog pane, not to be confused with the catalog view below it, but the catalog pane. And by the way, if your project's kind of scrunched up at some point like this, if you're trying to manage too many things, it's kind of hard to see. So you have to hover over them to find it, but the catalog pane should be the top one on the left-hand corner. So I'll click on that and it'll come up over onto the right side.
Hey, Sean, Aaron says mine didn't work.
Which one?
Aaron online says that hers did not work.
What?
Theirs did not work. I'm not sure.
Okay, let's check. I'm going to go to the chat and see.
Aaron, what do you mean yours didn't work? Keep going, Sean.
Okay,
I'll
okay,
wait and see.
gotcha. Okay, cool. Okay, so anyways, once you bring up the catalog pane, you'll see there's a folder option there as well, and you can expand the folders down. And now that I have this, well, it's down quite a ways. Now I can bring up that whole directory of files here, and we can just start dropping them into our project much more quickly than just doing like navigating each time over and over again. And what I mean by that is let's just start with the boundary and just grab it. And you can either just drag it and drop it here, or you can drag it and drop it over onto into the contents here. And it'll show up. Shane, did that work out there?
No, I'm not sure, Sean. We'll see.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So after the boundary, then we can go through to the digital surface models. So all I'm doing is I'm expanding each one of these file folders with the little arrow and then putting in the rest of the data. And what I'll do just to make it quicker, you'll see, is I can just grab it, drag it and drop it here, drag it, drop it here. And don't worry if they cover each other up. That's the next step, is to kind of organize that a little bit better. Take the DTM, drag and drop in. We already did the mosaic because that was the first one we did. So we'll skip it. Then we'll do the normalized difference vegetation index, just drag and drop. The pack line data, this is tabular data. It won't come in as a map layer. It'll actually show up at the very, very bottom of your contents pane, but we can just grab that, drag it and drop it, and it will end up in there, but you just won't see it. Not until we join it with some tree data. And then projects, we'll go to the LREC projects. We don't need well, actually we'll take both of them. We'll do the LREC projects and then the 64 West project. Good. And the last one, the trees, I'm going to skip that one for now because I want to show you how to get data from online as well. Good. So if everybody's had a chance to do that, if you bring up the catalog pane, navigate down through your folders until you get to the ArcGIS Pro workshop, then bring in almost everything except for the backup LREC DSM. That was put in there at one point just because sometimes these layers got corrupted or broken in one of the processing steps, and that doesn't seem to happen anymore. And you don't need to bring in the mosaic or the trees, but everything else you can just bring in, just drag and drop into your project. Good. Now let's add one more thing in here. And this is, we can do a couple different ways, but the first way we'll do it is we'll do it through the catalog pane still while we're here. And how that works is instead of having it project based where you see over, if you can see where my cursor's at over on the far, like kind of the right side, I'm going to move over and click on portal under catalog. And so this is a portal to online data sources. Underneath that, you'll see your own content. So if you have an ArcGIS Online account and you have a whole bunch of your own contents there, your favorites, groups, your organization, everything your organization's curated and shared within itself, and then ArcGIS Online and Living Atlas. ArcGIS Online is the one that we'll want to use. And so once I've clicked ArcGIS Online, I'm going to go down and type in LREC for Lynn Cove Research and Extension Center _trees and click enter. So the first one of these, if you kind of hover over it, you'll see that it was, I published it last fall. And that is the same layer that's down in your other contents in your project contents, but this time it'll be coming from an online source from ArcGIS Online. What you do there is you right click and click add to current map. Good. So now we have a whole bunch of trees. One more thing, another way that we can add data is we can add it through the catalog view. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can see all this data that we've piled in there, and you can see it's kind of it's a mess because it's just thing piled on top of thing. And one thing to note is that whatever the drawing order is over here, whatever's on the top is on the top on the map as well. And we'll get to reorganizing that and cleaning that up in a minute. And actually keeping your data organized in a project is half the battle a lot of the time. It's like that's makes your life much easier. And so that's one of the reasons why I want to make sure, we cover that early on here. Before we do that, I want to show you one more way of bringing in data, and that's through catalog view, and we can click on that. And this time there's just more metadata and information available to you than you'll see through the catalog pane. You'll also see that now we've added a new tab within our project. So there's the map view and then there's the catalog view in here. And if I go down to the left-hand side, now I have under the portal options are available to me here. So I need to click on one of those, and let's click on Living Atlas. And that'll bring up some Living Atlas options here. And up to the top right, let's type in NAIP or NAIP for the National Agriculture Imagery Program from the USDA, Department of Agriculture. And once I click, then I have to press enter to have that come up. Now you'll have a variety of this roughly recently now is 0.6 meter resolution that covers the whole country every couple of years. That's flown on occupied aircraft. You have a bunch of different options, and this is like bringing in a new base layer of data. I like color infrared because I'm a remote sensing guy, and I like I just like the way that vegetation is accented in color infrared. So I'm going to right click on that and click add to map. You can see when I right click on it too, the summary, the metadata for this comes up on the right hand side, all kinds of information. But I can click add to map, and you won't see anything happen right away at all here, at least. But if I go back up to the map tab, you'll see then I have this background layer of NAIP imagery that's now been added to my project. So if you missed that step, don't worry, that's just a show and tell mostly. It's just so you can get used to having that. And then also for the reason of I want to show you how to list data by source too, because once in a while, that's important for being able to track down where your data is coming from. So if I'm over in the contents and I go from the drawing order to list data by source, now I can look down and see that the topographic map is coming from an ArcGIS location here. The hillshade, also ArcGIS. Then we have a bunch of stuff on the C drive. And if I go further down, you'll see the NAPE imagery is also through ArcGIS. But this is, you can see it's actually a URL, essentially an HTTPS site is where that data is coming from. Good. Now I'll revert back to the drawing order because that's my preferred way of looking at the data, because then it makes it easier to organize it over here. I'm going to turn off the NAPE imagery. So do that, please. Yeah, turn off the NAPE imagery. And then the way you do that, you click on the radio box to do so. And I mentioned before that whatever's on top is going to be drawn on the top of your map. So what I'll do is I'll grab that and I'll just drag it downward. And I'm going to put it somewhere really low, like almost at the bottom. It's kind of a convention. Is the larger the layer, the further down it should be. Good. So let's organize a little bit of this stuff. So we have the trees. That's at the top. It's kind of funny how it's inside of a layer group. I'll show you how to do layer groups in a little bit. So I'm going to just drag that out of the layer group. So I don't need that. And I'm going to delete that. So what I did is I just drug it up and then just put it at the top. So see how I have this box, this layer group. The trees were inside of it. I just pulled it outside of it. That way I can right click and then remove just the box. Now I have the 64 West Field and the LREC projects. So those are polygons. So and we also have the LREC boundary that's way down here. That's another polygon. So I'm going to put those together. So the polygons are kind of together here. And what I can do is I can click and then push the control button and then click the others. Right click on the mouse. And then at the top almost of your pop-up window, you can select group. And that way what it did is it just grouped all the polygons together. And I can change the name of that group by just clicking it once and typing in something like polygon. Or polygons, plural. Now I can reduce or expand or turn all of them off at the same time. So then I have just a polygon group that's there. Let's do the same thing with some of the rasters. So the NDVI, press Control, the DTM. I'm going to skip over the LREC drone DSM because we're going to use that in a moment. But I'm going to select the 64 West DSM and click that, and then right click and select group again at the top. And this time, when I click it once, I can call it rasters. And bring it up. And there we go. And so then I closed out some of the rasters. But I still have the trees that are abundant here, and I have this layer of the elevation model. The digital surface model is essentially an elevation model, a digital model of the tops of canopies. So that's not counted. That's not just ground level. So that's the elevation at the top of, say, in this case, a bunch of citrus trees is the height of all the area relative to sea level. So there'd be, in this case, like 185 meters above sea level, or 185 feet. Not sure which one it is in this case, probably meters, I'm sure. But so we have now a nice elevation model. We have all these other layers in here as well. One of which is the drone, or the 64 West drone SM or MS, which stands for multispectral mosaic. Let's drag that up a little bit. And so you'll see it pop up on the map here. A nice way to be able to get to that. So if you were trying to search for a layer, sometimes it'll be buried under something else, but sometimes it's just kind of obscured by everything that you see here. You can right click and then zoom to. So right click, zoom to layer, and then it jumps me right to that layer. See, now this one, I just happen to know this because I flew this and I have a convention of how I collect my data, but this looks kind of normal. But the problem is that the bands are the parts of the electromagnetic spectrum associated with each color are a little out of order here, because it's actually band 3 is red, because for the red edge multispectral camera, which multispectral refers to where you have more than red, green, and blue. In this case, we also have red edge, which is just right outside of your visible range into the infrared. And then you have the near infrared, which is a little bit further out in the wavelength. But I know that band 1 actually is blue, because it goes from the smallest wavelength to the largest wavelength. It's band 1 is blue, and band 3 is red, so it's backwards here. Two ways that we can adjust this. Let's do it this way first. Go down to the 64 West drone MS and just right click on the color, and you can switch it to band 3, and you'll see it changes a little bit. And then same thing, right click on the blue and then click band 1. And then it's actually really the true color of the orchard. In this case, a navel orange orchard. Good. But that's not the extent of what I would like to do here. What I'd really like to do is a little bit more stylization or symbology, changes to symbology. Depending on what software application you're working in, you'll hear these two terms thrown around synonymously as style or stylization, and symbol or symbology. In this case, I'll try to stick with symbology, I guess. So what I'll do here is I'm going to, with this highlighted, again, this is where the contextual ribbon comes in. I can click map at the top. So this is still highlighted. Make sure that this particular, the 64 West drone MS mosaic is highlighted. And then I'm going to go up to the top, click on the raster layer, and then move over to the right to the band combination. And don't click on band combination, but just click on the little drop down arrow. And all the way down at the bottom, you can select custom. And so this time I want to create a false color infrared image. And the way that we could do that is we could start off by changing the name to 532 underscore CIR. Oops, I have to hit the underscore. CIR, again, false color infrared. And that's what we're going to do here up on the band order. So we're going to make this band 5, because red's going to be showing the intensity of reflectance of near infrared. Green is going to show the intensity of red. So I'm going to switch that to band 3. And then band 1 is going to be green. So it's just like, think of this, you're just offsetting the colors. So when I add this and it changes, now the brighter the red it is a reflection of how much near infrared is reflecting off the canopy. And the thing with near infrared is that plants reflect near infrared very strongly, more strongly than green or anything else. So what you end up having is more contrast that focuses on plants. And oftentimes, if you're looking at either a false color infrared or NDVI, even more so, you're looking at the relative vigor or health of the plants, which might be important for visualization of your analysis and results. Good. So now we have a good, a good backdrop here. From here, let's go up and click Save. I want to make sure up at the very top left-hand corner, click the Save button. And with that, I could move on to the next step, but I would prefer to take just a quick 5-minute break before I jump into something new. Because then we're going to really get into some more analysis and visualization steps. Good. So with that, let's come back at 2:34-ish. Sound good? And what I'm going to do next is a little bit more visualization, and then I want to start looking at some how to look at attribute data and then do some querying. But before that, I want to zoom out a little bit again so we can see this bigger area. This isn't going to end up in your final map, but it's a really neat thing to know how to do. And I would like to leave you a little bit of time to be able to play with this in case you want to do a little bit of exploratory creative license map making as well. So for right now, we've changed the symbology of the mosaic. I'm going to turn that off for now. So we're just going to be looking at the digital surface model here. And a really, really neat thing about ArcGIS Pro is they've added in these imagery tools. And so if I click on the LREC drone DSM layer, then I can do basic analysis on the fly within, so just have it happen and put it in the project's memory. And the way I do that is go up to imagery, because this is a raster as an image, even though it's not like a red, green, blue, it's just one layer of elevation. So that's why it's black and white right now. But if I go up to imagery, I can create something called a hill shade that will accent the topography a little bit more. And from here, from the imagery, I'll go over to raster functions and click on this, and you'll get a raster function pane that shows up on your right-hand side. And in the raster function, let's just type in hill shade, or just hill, and it'll get you that far. And then click on the hill shade option that becomes apparent. From here, what we'll do is we'll need to select which layer we want to apply this function to, or this tool to. And so we'll do the drop down and go down to the LREC drone DSM TIFF and select that. For the hill shade type, we can select multi-directional and scaling none, and then that's all the information we really need there. So then we can go down and just click create new layer, and see how fast it happens. It's like instantaneous. You don't have to process. Just it has a run a geoprocessing tool forever, like you once upon had to do. And now you have this layer, but it doesn't look quite right with having all of that kind of sprawling extra area around it. And so let's get rid of that with a mask. I'm going to close the raster function there. But the way you do that, and I'm going to move a little of the panes over a little bit, is that you're going to go back up to map, select the hill shade, make sure it's the option, and click the raster. Oh, excuse me. I went to map for a reason. Before that, you're going to click on the explore button if it isn't already activated, and go over to your map and just click on that hill shade. And this explore tool is really handy. It shows you values of rasters, or it'll give you information about a vector layer that's below it too. But when you click on a raster like this, the first value that comes up is the digital number for that position that you clicked. If I click somewhere else, you'll see 69, you'll see 49, 228. But in this case, the 228 relates to the area, the sprawling area around it. So that's the number that we'll want to get rid of. So 228. So then what we'll do is we'll go up to the raster layer on the top, along the tabs on the top, go to the raster layer. This still has to be highlighted. And we'll click on symbology. We don't click the drop down area, just the actual brush and kind of yellow tarp thing there. And then from here, we're going to go down to mask. See if you see I got symbology, and then down at the very bottom, the middle tab at the bottom, click on the radial box and then type in 228. And enter. Of course, then now we have a black background, and the reason for that is because if I go over to my contents and I toggle on and off of the DSM is still hidden behind it. So I'm going to turn off the hill shade for now. So let's do a little bit of, let's do the same kind of adjustment to the DSM. So again, demonstrating the contextual nature of ArcGIS Pro. When I go down and I click on this DSM, the symbology pane changes. And so I can go to mask now, click on this, but 0 happens to be that area on the outside. So now we only have that isolated area of the research center that we're really interested in. Let's do one more thing that's really neat. I'm going to turn on the hill shade again. So I'm going to click the radio box for the hill shade. It covers up the DSM. And I'm going, while this is highlighted, the hill shade is, I'm going to go up to make sure it's still in the raster layer selected. It probably still is from the last time. Go over to layer blend, click the drop down, go down to darkening modes and click on multiply. So what it ended up doing is accenting the drone DSM down below, but the style of that still is not very pretty. So you can see how I'm hopping back and forth between these two layers. I could maybe move them up next to each other so it's a little bit more intuitive that these two are now related. But what I'll do is when I have I'll click on the LREC drone DSMs, just like I have here. So it's highlighted. And I'm going to change the style color. So I'll click the drop down. And then go down. If you click on the right a couple times, you'll end up getting to this. It's called elevation 1. Is a really nice elevation level kind of color scheme. And then now in my opinion, this looks like a really nice view of elevation of the research center. It's almost like a topographic or with a topographic effect to it. Good. Now I would suggest going up and clicking save. So this project is saved now. Once you've done it in some steps like this. Now let's move on to some more. Actually, you know what I'd like to do first is I would put these both into a layer group. So I'll click on one and then control and click on the other. Right click, group, click it once and call it something like elevation. Enter. And then I can turn them all off at once if I would like. Or I can reduce them down. Good, but I'll turn it off for now. And I'm going to expand the polygons because we're going to do it. We're going to go through some different stylization or symbology tweaks for each of the different kinds of layers that we have here while we're organizing and doing a little bit of a querying and analysis. So the next one is I'm going to turn on the polygons, but there's all over the place, right? We can uncheck the LREC projects. That one's not so important. The color contrast here is not the best in the world, but for the boundary, we don't want to have just a plain polygon. What I'd suggest doing is going down and just clicking on the box, and you'll see the symbology for that come up on the right. And once it's there, you just go over and click on the black outline. And now we just have an outline of the area that we're interested in. As for the 64 West field, we could also change that into a dark outline as well. So I'm going to click on that, and the options are going to now relate only to that layer. So if I click on the just box under the 64 W field, I can click on the outline and have something similar, but that doesn't tell us much. There's no difference between the two. It's just, why is it like that? So to change it, what we can do is go up to properties. So see at the top, there's the gallery is where we're at right now. If we go to properties, then we can change the inside color as well. By clicking the drop down arrow, now it's no color, but let's make it something bright and pop out. and then click apply at the bottom. And then you have something that's going to later become our call out. We'll leave the boundary layer hollowed like that for now. Actually, let me think about that for a second. While we're here, actually, we might as well. Let's change the LREC boundary. Typically, the directions for this are at the end of the exercise, but we might as well do it now while we're here. We can do the same thing as we just did with the 64 West, is go over. You might have to, if you click on this, you might have to click on the symbol in the symbology pane. And let's change the color to something dark. And I'm thinking like dark medium gray or so, and click apply. And see, there you have the call out that resembled or at least a map that looks like the call out that is going to be in your final product. Click save often. Good. So that's how you change the symbology of something like a polygon. There's also other options in there, by the way, too. You can go, you can change the transparency, you can layer blend, you can swipe. So here's an example of swipe. So if I had something underneath maybe that was turned on, I'll turn on the nape imagery, for example. And I wanted to be able to swipe, I could go up with, as long as the LREC boundary is the one that's actually highlighted, I can click on swipe and then just drag over that there. Kind of a neat effect. But this has to be highlighted and it has to be a feature layer, and then the swipe has to be selected in that order. Good. You can go down and I can turn off the nape again because it's kind of large. Good. Let's do a little bit of, now we're moving up the chain. We're going from raster to polygon. Now we're going to go up to the trees. Let's click on the LREC trees layer. Turn that on. And you'll see a whole bunch of trees appear. And we don't really need to like analyze or map all of those trees. It'd be a little much and it takes a lot of I don't know, a little bit of technique to get like that many points to actually be meaningful, because you can see how dense they are. It just wouldn't make sense at this scale for a map. But what we can do is make a map of this polygon that we're interested in. So I'm using the roller button. I should have probably mentioned earlier in the very beginning that it's really nice to have a mouse or a roller trackball when you're working in GIS. I digress again. So now that we're here, we have all these points. We're over the polygon. We can turn off the polygons now. For now, over in the contents, go down and turn on the 64 West mosaic that we styled earlier. And you can see that the kind of orange, the default dot, does not really contrast very well with those trees. And it really isn't meaningful so much, but we'll worry about that shortly. Reduce the polygons for now. I want to look at the attributes though, and because I happen to know that this is field 64 West and the rest of the areas around have different designations, and where those designations can be found at is if you right click on the layer and go to attribute table, you'll see a table pop up probably in the bottom part of your screen. And if I move over, and I'm going to move my zoom a little bit, actually I can move 2 zooms out of the way. If I go and I scroll over, each field has its own designation of 60, in this case F63, there's 71, you name it, but that particular field that we're interested in is field 64 West. To select just that, you could do it a couple of different ways. One way is you can manually do it by going up to map and select, and you can draw an area to get all of that area. But that might not be perfect, and it might be actually difficult at sometimes because you're working with angled edges and you name it. So there's a different way that we might do this. First, I'm going to clear it. So I'm in map. Clear is the little button to the right side. Clear the selection. You can also do that down in here. But let's select, actually, I need to move this over so I can see everything. Select by attributes. So it's a way of doing a query. You can do much, much more complex queries than what we're going to do right now. But for now, what I'd say is click on select by attributes. And we're working with the LREC trees. Do a new selection is fine. So we can select, the first option is select a field, and we're going to go with field because we're interested in just that particular field where we have the data clipped to. Not equal is equal to. Let's do something more like it begins with. And we'll type in F64W and then apply. We'll take a second or two. Now, if we move off to this out of the way, and we can already see, if we scroll, we can already see that that area is selected. So we can click OK and get rid of the box. Now in the directions, there's a couple different ways that are explained, or there's two different paths to being able to get data into your local project from online. And if you remember right, this data came here from ArcGIS Online. So we remember we went into the portal and we brought in the tree data. And so this data is not residing in our current project, it's residing online. And sometimes you want to preserve that data in your own project, because what if they decide not to host it anymore, or whatever the case is, or maybe they make changes to it and that you don't want, say if it's a time-lapse series kind of data. So one way to get this data into your project is you can export it, or you can join it with another layer of data. And right now we will do an export. And we can actually, while we're at it, we can kind of kill two birds with one stone, because this data, if you recall also, was optimized for online use. So it's a Web Mercator coordinate system. The way I can find that out is you'll notice there's 307 trees selected, but the way I can find out what its coordinate system is I can right click on that layer, go down to properties, and then go to source, scroll all the way down and expand the spatial reference. And you'll see under projection, it's Mercator Auxiliary Sphere. So the projection WGS 84, but Web Mercator, the coordinate system. So that's how I find the coordinates of that given layer. You can also find other information in here, but we don't need to worry about that right now. The one thing that is handy though sometimes is source again, is if you're trying to find the URL or the file location of that given layer. Or sometimes you can reset the source to somewhere else if the linkage gets broken. So I'm going to close that. So I mentioned killing two birds with one stone, and what I was referring to there was I can both export this data into my own collection, my project's collection of data, but I also can change the coordinate system at the same time. And the way that I do that is I can right click on the LREC trees, go down to data, and then select export features. Select export features here. And when you have anything highlighted, like when you have something selected and you run a process, only that data that's selected is going to be exported. So what I'll do is I can change the name a little bit, because it's not going to be just LREC trees export features. It really is, if I click on that, I have to go all the way to the back. That's really F64 64W trees, and we just can get rid of the rest of that. That's all it is F64 West trees instead. And what it'll do is it'll put it into the project geodatabase. Sometimes you can set a different location and then designate that you want it to come out as a shape file by putting .shp afterwards. But for now, let's just let it go into the geodatabase. But before I click OK, remember I mentioned I wanted to reproject it. You can use a geoprocessing tool called project or reproject, but even easier, while we're doing this, I can go to environments and I can select the coordinate system that I want to export it to. It's already it's projecting on the fly right now on your map. It already understands how to translate it to match up to whatever coordinate system that we started off with, which happened to be the UTM layer because that's what the mosaic came in as. But while you export it, it can get transformed in the export. So a couple ways you could do that. The easy way, and this is what I would have you do, is click the drop down and select current map. So if the first layer that you brought in was that this is what you want, which it was, then you can just export it that way. If you didn't do that and just watch this, you don't have to do this. You can also, if you know coordinate systems, then you can navigate through all of the different kinds of coordinate systems that might be the UTM, WGS 84, Northern Hemisphere, and yet down to 11 North. And that would be the same coordinate system that we have here. But you have to go through quite a few steps to get there. And if you don't know where to look, it might be hard. But so just selecting current map is a nice way to do it. And why is it now? Interesting. I wonder why it stopped. When I did it a second time, it decided it didn't want to do that anymore. You can also go down to the mosaic. Nope. What the heck's going on here? Output coordinates. I guess I will navigate down. That's strange. Oh, no, I haven't seen that happen before. With it gives me that really long, complex, weird thing. I'm gonna go now. I have to navigate. Apparently, UTM, WGS 84. If you don't do this, it doesn't matter for what we're doing today. It's just an example of what can be one way that you might want to go about it. Weird. I wonder why all the projection stuff's so complex looking up there. Let's find out if it works. And so after that's all done, click OK. And it looks like it worked. The way we can double check that is that we can go over here to the LREC trees and just turn it off. And then we only have the trees that are right there that we're interested in. Good. Is there any question? I actually haven't looked at the chat for a few. Should double check that. All right. Good. It looks like Maggie's taking care of the chat. Awesome. Great. So let's do one more thing before we take a break here. And that is I want to join layers together to make something that looks to make the symbology actually make sense here a little bit. Because right now what we're looking at is just a whole bunch of just orange points over trees that are almost orange. So that's not going to be good. So what we'll do is we'll go to the F64 West trees, right click on that, and we're going to go to open attribute table. Open the attribute table to start with because I want to show you something. This looks like an Excel table, right? Each one of these, if I click or another or a bunch of them, they'll end up highlighting on.
Sean, you did freeze or something.
Yeah, Sean's not here anymore. So let's take a break. Let's just come back at 3:05. I'm sure Sean will be logging back in.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll get it resolved.
All right. odd.
Sean, I just sent everybody on a break while you disappeared, so.
Perfect. Perfect.
305, 305.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. I don't know what happened. I just, my internet seems strong enough, but well, all right. Good timing though. It's time for a break anyways. If there's gonna be a time for Zoom to just stop working. I'll take off where I left off there right before my Zoom mysteriously stopped working. But so what I was, let's see, where was I at? So yes, we have all this attribute data that's along the bottom. Each one of these fields on each one of these rows is associated with one point. And then you have on the columns, you have different attributes for that given point on the ground. So that can include a FID number, which in the case of this, what we're going to be doing in a moment, we're going to be joining this field ID number with an RFID number that was assigned to each of these trees, because at this particular research center, they have this really cool system called the pack line. And how that works is when they harvest, in this case, navel oranges from the trees, they bundle all of the fruit from each tree and then tag it with the number of the tree that it came from. And then they take those bundles and they go and put it on this pack line that then measures the fruit in a number of ways, including the weight, the roundness, the coloration, all of that, to then do more deep analysis of what kind of, say, treatments they might be putting on the trees, if it's fertilizer, if it's more water, or whatever the case is, so they can then analyze how those trees are, how they're producing. And because there's that RFID, that data from the pack line, once it goes through the system, can then be reattached spatially to each one of these trees, is what we'll be doing in a minute. But you'll see in this column down, and what I'm getting at there is, if we look at this column here, we have this Lynn Cove, the field name. There's a little bit more RC. There's a root stock, if there was any information. Some of the trees at the facility have a root stock designation, a variety designation. But what we're interested, though, is linking the yield to the trees, that then in theory we could do, say, some analysis of the tree height. We could do analysis of the NDVI and see what kind of relationships that we have. Now, to compare, though, let's look at the pack line data. So we go all the way down to the bottom of your contents, and if you right click on the pack line data CSV and click open, you'll see that pop up down below, and you'll have less information there, but you'll still have the FID number that is associated with each of those trees. And then we have weight, diameter, and a number of other things. I don't know what the unit of measure are on most of these. Probably diameter. Yeah, I don't know. That seems a little large. 681's not meters, so maybe centimeters. But anyhow, you have these variety of metrics associated with each of those trees that we're going to then join to this. And how we do that join is we're going to go up to the 64 West trees, right click on it. So it should be kind of close to the top of your contents pane. Right click on this F64 West. Going to go down to join and relates, a third of the way down your options, and click add join. From here, we are going to go over to the input join field, click the drop down, and select the FID LOL rec value. And it automatically recognizes that the pack line data is there, and because it has the same field name, and it just fills it in. So it should automatically put in the pack line as the second table option. And then we're going to say keep all targets are good. You don't need to click the validate join. I know this works. But sometimes it'll throw up a warning. But once you're this far, we're going to click OK. You see it kind of blink down at the bottom. And the reason for that now is if we go and look at the attribute table now, see, we're still on the 64 west trees in the attribute tables. But if we now scroll over to the right, you'll see that the weight, the diameter, the volume, and you name it, are all added in here. It's kind of a researcher's. I know there's like a lot of time, most of our workshops are kind of research oriented. You might recognize the power of this. I just realized, okay, good, I didn't do it. If one thing to note, I almost oh'd, because if I would have had like some of these fields highlighted and I would have tried doing that, it might have messed up the process where I would not have got, I would have only got the data for those highlighted features, but that wasn't the case. So I'm going to clear that. But so back to what I was saying, for a researcher that where this would be applicable, I was on a real, this is not actually, this is kind of artificially set up right here. It's real packline data, but I had to kind of mess with the numbers, or assign arbitrarily to some of the trees because I didn't have all the RFID information. But on a different project I was out on one time where they were doing fecal coliform samples for cow patties, going back to the labs, but tagging them with the GPS, the points with the GPS, that then once they ran through the lab results could be brought back associated with that point, and then associated with like stream water quality. So there's so that's another example of how you might take ancillary data and retie it to something like a kind of spatial analysis. Good. So now we don't need the tables open right now. We know what's there. Reduce those down. Let's do some cool symbology. For that, what we'll do is highlight this tree here, go up to the top, and select feature layer. So remember we already did rasters, both a single layer raster, a DEM or DSM, as well as the mosaic with the color infrared. We did the polygons. Now it's time for points. And with this, we're going to select the 64 west trees, click feature layer, and do the drop down under symbology this time, because we're going to go with graduated symbols. Click graduated symbols. And you'll see that is not very pretty, right? It just doesn't make sense. It's just a cluster. Well, the reason why the graduated symbols are looking so heavy down on the bottom for some reason is because they're associated with what's being represented as bigger is related to the field ID number, and that's kind of meaningless when it comes to the size of the features or the feature points. So what we need to do is go over to the symbology on the right, should be automatically open. Click the drop down and go down and select something like weight. And then you actually get values that might make a little bit more sense. So you can see kind of there's a tendency of more weighty fruit that are being produced kind of near the upper middle portion of the field. So maybe if there was a trial of some sort, maybe that area has either the least pests or has the best fertilizer, the most water, whatever the case is, then you can kind of, make some comparisons. But this is just graduated symbols. And I was just looking at the clock, and we actually have more time than we usually do at this point. And I don't want to get too carried away with too much analysis, but there is one type of analysis that is really fun. So I'll show you how to do that really quick. And what I'm talking about there is I like interpolation. Interpolation is a way of kind of sheeting, like creating almost like a topographic layer, but based on values of points. In this case, we could use the weight values. So what I'll do is we'll click the save button at the top, because we're going to go do an analysis step. And we haven't really done any analysis steps yet. So this is kind of a good thing. Click on analysis at the top. Click on tools. And we'll go over to the side, and instead of trying to look up interpolation, different options, let's just type in spline. because that's one of my favorite forms of interpolation. And click on that in the geoprocessing. So we did geoprocessing spline, click there. Now we'll select the 64 West trees. We definitely don't want to have the field ID number as the value that we're interpolating. We want to have the weight, probably is what I would suggest. Select that as the value. And then we can have output raster. We can say 64 West 1 or whatever. It's okay, the default. We know what this is, what the only spline layer is that we have is going to be. The output cell size is fine, I'm sure, I imagine. And then regularized, fine. So with that, then we can go down and click run. This won't probably take very long. It's not a very big area, but there you have it. You now have a map or a raster showing the relative kind of the weight of the trees that's stretched around between them. This is not really the best symbology that I would maybe hope for. I might click on this layer here over the spline layer, that is, go up to raster data, click on symbology, or click on the drop down and select stretch. And then pick something that is more from the drop down on the color scheme. Pick something that is, I don't know, green to red, for example, to show good to bad. Might have to find some more that are like a little bit more bracketed the way that you want. Could be other, like maybe there's a good blue to red, I think is in here, but fine, you can just pick out one that like you really like. Good, that's a better one. So now if I go over to the contents and I scroll up and turn off the trees, you can see the green spots. There's a kind of like little tendencies of where there's more heavy fruit that's coming out. And you might, and if we were going to actually use the interpolation layer here for our final product, I'd probably restylize the 64 West trees to something else, but let's not do that right now. Good. We'll just turn off the spline. That was just a kind of a fun little exercise of how you can use the geoprocessing tools. Good. I think it's time to start doing a little bit of cartography. We haven't been going long, so I'm not going to take a break yet. Sometimes I do a break. I think we'll just push on through. So with my little Zoom dropout there. So let's start making creating some layouts, and what that refers to, if going back to what we talked about at the beginning, what we've been working on here is a map. All of these map features we symbolize the map features, we figure out the order of everything, but this is not where you put in your legends, your neat lines, all of that. That's where you do all that in your layout view. And the way that we can do that is we will go up to, oh, by the way, before I do that, we can also, if you wanted to, we can go to map and we can change the base map if we wanted to one of these other options. And I'll just throw one in there just randomly, the imagery, and you'll see the RGB imagery pops up in the background. But I don't really want that. I want it to be nice and clean like the products that we saw at the beginning. So I'll go all the way down to the bottom and I'll turn off the world imagery. So it's just blank white. Good. We're going to kind of organize some things so they look nice. Like, for example, we might want to accent this particular field right here. If we turned on the polygons, it's too much. But we might want to use this 64 West to accent it. But we also might want to use this red value for the call out. And what I'm talking about there is if I go over to my old map, you'll see how we have this call out map on the bottom side with it highlights that field in the research center. We want to keep that, but we also might want to have a nice sharp edge around the field that we're interested in. And so the way that we can do that easily is we can right click on this field here on the under polygons, 64 West field, right click on it and select copy. Then come up to the top of the map, right click and paste. And now it covers everything up, but don't worry, that was like this by design. So we have that in there. What we can do next is go over to the right side, select. So symbology should automatically be up, but if not, you click the top and click symbology. Click that red box and then go to gallery and just select black outline. And now we have a nice clean area. Our area of interest is well defined. I'd select save again. Now let's get started with the layout. We don't need the catalog in here anymore, so you can click off of the catalog. Don't X out the map, but just X out of the catalog. Go up to insert and select the drop down under layout. It's a little drop down button. We'll go down to ANSI landscape, the 8.5 by 11. So I want to have the landscape version. Click that. So now you have just kind of like a blank sheet essentially for to put your map on. But there's the question, how do you put the map on it? And the way to do that is you go up to the insert, excuse me. Oh, map frame, I'm sorry. I almost as the brain freeze for a second. I was like looking at new map. Well, no, that's not what I want. I want a new map frame. And so I'm going to click the drop down on that and select our map that we've created. So to see where I did that at the map frame, but nothing appeared. And the reason for that is because you got to manually put it in. So go to if you can, I don't know if you can see my cursor on the Zoom, but if I go all the way up to the top left-hand corner, I can click on the corner and then drag all the way down to the bottom. And it'll snap to the edges. And I let go, and then it brings it in. Oh, good. It brought in some of the information, the attribute information, which is good because I want to be able to show you how to get rid of that. For a couple of you more advanced users, you probably might know it, but some will really want to know how to get rid of that, the kind of the credits. Now you notice that it's in there, but this is unlike, so if I toggle back and forth between the layout and the map, you'll see that some things change on the left-hand side. The contents now refers to the map is one of the types of content, but when we put in our legend, we put in text, those contents will then appear over here. But you can't, one thing to note is you can't navigate around here. So if I grab and I move it, it's going to move the whole map. It doesn't actually move the frame like I want. I can't zoom in and out. It zooms in and out of the whole layout. To be able to frame it more nicely, what we do is we right click and select activate. Then it'll act like the actual map in here. So I can then scroll in and out. And what I do is I get to where I want it just right. I wonder what's causing the hybrid imagery reference layer. I don't know what the heck's on there, but anyhow, there's what's causing the credits to occur. Well, now while it's activated, oops. When it's activated, I can get it into the position I want it. You can also click explore to be able to move it. And what I'm going to do is try to center it more or less right about there is probably good. Just a little up. Want enough room to put a legend on the left-hand side and put a scale bar and north arrow on the right-hand side. Good. I don't like where these credits are. They're just annoying me a little bit. So what I'm going to do is get rid of them. And how I do that is I'm going to go up to the layout tab at the top, and then I'm going to close activation. So the layout tab should be on the top, close activation. And now I'm going to go to, with insert selected, go over to the drop down under dynamic text. Good. So if you see what I say, so it's insert tab, dynamic text. I'm going to scroll down until I see layout, service credit, service layers credits, and I'll click on that. Now, if I scroll out and I click off of the map somewhere, it'll take the credits off of the map. Sometimes you want them on there, and sometimes you really don't. Now we can start adding in some really neat map elements, including a title would probably be one of the first things that I would think of. So again, I'll toggle back to looking at the other map so we can use it as a comparison. See how I have a title across the bottom there with Lynn Cove Research Extension Center and the Naval Orange Production. So what I'll do is to emulate that, I'll switch back to our map and add in some text. What I'll do is go insert text. I'm going to go all the way over. There's the straight text is probably what I want. So you see what I'm doing here. So with the insert tab still selected, over on the top right, kind of right, there's the straight text option, just the letter A. We'll click on that. Go down somewhere kind of down the roughly in this area, stretch out a box, and we can type in Lynn Cove Research and Extension Center. That's going to be a little larger than we want. So what we'll do is we'll change it. And the way we change it is that should be text number 1 is the one we're selecting. So if we double click that text number 1 over on the left-hand side, it'll pop up on the right-hand side. You can probably close the symbology, the geoprocessing tools, the catalog. Those can get all changed now or closed. But you see, if I double click on it over in the contents of the layout pane, then the element, the text element will pop up. And this is where we can change the text symbol. Specifically, we can go to text symbol and appearance. And then we can change the size to something more like, more like a 28 or so, maybe. And then we have to click apply. 28 might be a little small. We can type in something like 32 and apply. That's close enough. Maybe move it a little bit to the side because I want to leave enough room to put in the call out. Space it just right. And let's repeat that same process, but with, in this case, we're going to do Naval Orange Production. So go up to the letter again, click on that, go down, put in a little box here. It might show up as small, it might show up as medium. Last time I did it, it showed up as small there, a small text, but I'll type in Naval Orange Production. And same thing as before, but this time we're going to go up to the text 2, double click on that, because that's related to this. You can rename these too, but for now we'll just leave them text 1, text 2. And head over to the element properties, click on the text symbol again. We don't want it to be 37. Let's make it something more like 26 or so. and then click apply. There we go. We can adjust these a little bit as we feel as we like. You can see when the snap arrows kind of come in. But next step is what you often would call it. Well, it's called a neat line in cartography. I'll show you what I'm talking about right there is this line that cuts across. And if I zoom in, you'll see the way I stylized it before was just a little blue highlight to give it just a little something. Let's do that. And what that really is just a polygon, or not like a polygon map layer, but it's like a polygon from over on the top. So we're going to insert in a shape, and so we're going to go insert again, and over to the side, I'm going to get some more options. There we go, polygon shape. There we go. So see where I did that? I went insert, the drop down underneath all the text options. Just go down and select the polygon shape. Now this time, let's just drag from one end to the other, just a thin polygon all the way across. We can adjust it later. Uh-oh, I have map element. My screen is too small to see how far it goes. I'm going to have to stretch some stuff out here. Oh, there we go. And always adjust it. Bring it back. Now, because it's not activated, we can zoom in and we can really clean it up by bringing it down to a much smaller size, something more reasonable, like that. See what I did there? This is zoomed in and then got it to that point. Now I'm going to go over to the side. I'm going to click on it, and the elements options will come up on the right. And what I'll do is go to symbol. So see, I have the rectangle, double clicked it in the contents. Now I switch to the other side, go to symbol. And I want to make the inside color that dark blue that I like, or you can do whatever color you want. But yeah, I'm going to make the inside blue and click apply. And then I have the neat line that comes across. By the way, the spacing of some of this stuff could be adjusted a little bit too. I can maybe come over and drag this down a little bit, drag this down a little bit. There's always going to be subtle tweaks that you'll make over and over and over again on many mapping projects. Good. I would recommend saving. Now let's add in our legend. To do that, we're going to go up to still insert. Over to the side, we're going to go to legend, but do the drop down. Don't just click on legend. Do the drop down. And actually, we can just click legends, fine. And then we're going to just drag a box over onto the top side of the window. But here's the problem: you got all these different layers that it's wanting to give you a legend for. Now this is an interesting thing about working with these is that it shows you everything that's on here, but we don't want to have a legend for everything necessarily, especially the mosaic. It just doesn't make sense. We don't need to have the field boundary either, for sure. The way we adjust that is we go over to the layout and do the drop down. And then we can turn off anything in the legend that we don't want. So we don't want the 64 field. Let's see, we don't want the trees we do want. We don't want the LREC trees. We don't want pretty much anything except for the 64 West trees. So I just go all the way down the list and uncheck all of them until it's just the trees. One little problem though is that F64W underscore trees and weight is not really necessarily what we want to have spelled out there. And we have all of these long digits too. Like, I mean, who needs to have like, whatever that is, 6 digits? You don't change that here. You actually change that back in the map. And let's do that now. We'll Go to the map, go to the trees, select it here, go up to feature layer, select the symbology. We still have this element stuff here. We can close that down. Good. I had to get some zoom stuff out of my way really quick. Good. So over here, we can go, I believe it is, which one is it? First of all, we want to get rid of the extra digits. And I'm trying to remember which one of these it was that how many characters that it has. Shoot. No, I think it's the last one. Format labels. That's it. Good. Decimal places. Knew it was in one of those. I said some days I'm a 1, some days I'm a 4.5. It's just there's so many things to remember in these. It's and depending on how you're using your GIS, here's thousands of things to remember. The only person that seems to always remember all of them is Shane Fire. It seems like he knows where all of these buttons, and Robert's not far behind. But yeah, if you don't work on this all like a complexity of projects every day, you'll forget like where some of these things are at. But or at least vaguely kind of slightly forget. But anyhow, I digress. Here's the decimal places. Let's just reduce it down to like 1 or so, or 2 maybe. That's probably fine. Good. And then I mentioned too, the text is not exactly what we wanted either. And how we change that is we just change it here in, remember we're in the map layer. We come in here, click again, and you can change it. So we could say field 64 west. And then click, and then slowly click again for a weight. And say, I don't know what this would be. It's probably pounds, LBS. I guess, or you could just say pounds too. Abbreviations on a map are not really ideal. I don't know. You can adjust it depending on what the project calls for. I don't even know if that's in pounds. That could be in whatever unit of measure. Now, though, once I've done that, now let's go back to the layout, and what you'll see is you have a much cleaner a much cleaner legend there. Let's add a couple more things. Perfect glide path for the workshop, by the way, as far as finishing up. Sometimes we get down to this end part and it's pretty hard to get everything packed in here. Let's get in, let's put in a a north arrow. So we'll go to insert again, go north arrow, but instead of just clicking north arrow, click the drop down. You can pick whichever one you want. I have my preferences. I like something simple usually, like this or like this. I think this is the one we used in the example. And so I'll just stretch that out and drop it in here somewhere. That's a little bigger than I needed, so I can always scrunch it up a little bit. Good. So get it, find a good spot to kind of position it so you have the right white balance with the map of interest. Next, probably put in a scale bar, so it's already at insert, so we'll do the drop down next to scale bar, and we can use either metric or imperial, depends on, since we use pounds, so we can go ahead and use imperial, I guess. And for that, I would like something, I don't know, so you can take your pick, but I kind of prefer something simple like the drop down here, the scale line 3, and I'll select that and then drag it onto the map. But here's the thing though, 0.01 miles. I mean, what's that going to tell anybody, huh? So let's adjust that. And the way you do that is just like the other ones, is you go over and you double click on it in the layout. And you'll see down at the bottom, the map units can be changed really easily here. You can also go in and, by the way, text symbols and all kinds of scale bars, you can change like the colors, you can bold things, font, you name it. but we're just going to worry about the actual units of measure right now. And the way I do that is instead of having it miles, let's make it feet. So there, now if I reduce some of this down, 60 feet is a lot more appropriate for a kind of a scale. Good. We can always adjust these two to get them just the way we want them. For now, I'll save. I like to save a lot, obviously. And now there's one last map element that's missing, and that would be the call out. So if you go back here, you see the call out, and I don't think we're not going to do the drop shadow just because the drop shadow is kind of a hassle to add in there. It's just time consuming to recreate that, but we can do the rest of the call out. That was just kind of like a playing around extra fun effect. So we'll go back to the map. And to do a call out, what we actually need another map to add in here. So ideally what we're going to do is we're going to add in another map frame, but we don't have that call out built yet. But fortunately, it's super easy to do. So while we're still in insert, we're going to go over to new map and click that. So it's just blank right now. If we want, we can turn off the imagery, by the way, too. So there's nothing, it's nice and clean. We'll go back to map, the first map. And now this time we're going to go down and select these two polygons that we already symbolized the way we kind of like them. Click one and then control, click the other. So the LREC boundary and the 64 West field that probably are red and dark gray already. Right click and copy. Go back to the map that we just created, the extra one. And go to the map into the drawing order, right click and then paste. And there we have we have that call out map. It's that easy. If we planned ahead and we had the kind of stuff set up, makes it. Again, I did that for time saving, so we come in at a good time. But now it's all set up for us. Otherwise, you'd have to come in and maybe adjust your colors and tweak it a little bit. Good. Back to the layout. So in the tabs, we'll go to the layout tab again. See that. And to add in the call out, what we'll do is go up to add map frame. Click the drop down again. This time we'll click the second one. And we can go down onto our map and then drag that box down. And you'll see just a solid grayed out area with a box around it. Here's the thing, that's because it's zoomed at the wrong level, just like it kind of was zoomed at the wrong level when we brought in the other map. And the way to fix that again is you right click on it and activate. So right click on that box and then click activate. And then you can scroll using your roller ball. Good, till it's about the right size. And then we'll go back up to layout in the top tab and close activation. Hopefully that wasn't too quick there. I can adjust this to make sure that it fits in there nicely. But I don't probably want to have that weird box around the outside of it, so that could easily be removed. The way to do that, let's see the little, if I click off and it's just there, I want to click on it again. I'll go over to, I think it's the paintbrush, if I remember right, and do the border, drop it down to 0. And then when I click off, it's just going to be a nice call out there. Ultimately, then we can just adjust these things around a little bit as we want. If we wanted to activate the main map and adjust the position of the field just a teeny bit, you can do all kinds of things. If you wanted to change the size of this font, you can go back and change the font size in the other map. We're not going to do that though. I think it's fine. You don't want to have something that's not like really, really important just popping out too much. I think it probably got a pretty good balance now. Good. And then finally, we'll save the map. And with that, is there any questions? You can go and we have a whole bunch of different again, there's a bunch of steps in the exercise that you can include. You can also play with some of the other layers. You can put in the interpolation. There's a directions on how to clip a raster, so you can clip the spline interpolation and put that in here instead. If you were so inclined, you could have different different backgrounds with the NAPE imagery. You can do the whole research center. Oh, someone asked, what does spline mean? It's just a type of interpolation. I don't know what the definition precisely is. It's a non-strict non-triangular and non-strict kind of smoothing of a surface or using point values. Trying to think of like an analogy of that in statistics, like a more complex polynomial interpolation. But anyways, yeah, so yeah, it comes from woodworking. Great. I'm sure glad that, yeah, I know there was some software hiccups here along the way. We're if anybody wants before we do this, I was going to say that, yes, we're going to send out the evaluation for the workshop very shortly. And so you'll get that. If you could fill those out, we'd very much appreciate it. They are important to us. They help us track what we do in IGIS. It also helps us improve these workshops each time a little bit at a time. And that's our goal. And we have office hours, by the way, if we have not mentioned that yet. Every Monday and Tuesday, we have office hours for more complex questions. Say you go through the exercise on your own time and want to run into something, or maybe you want to apply some of these techniques to something that you're working on. Those office hours are open to everybody. You just go to the IGIS website and fill out there's a survey that you can sign up for at different times. And then we have, within our group, we have experts on all kinds of things. I largely do remote sensing and drone stuff, but other things as well. Obviously, we have Andy is available for R questions. He's a whiz at R. We have lots of expertise in our group that you can come and yeah. And we welcome those, welcome you coming to those and applying the stuff that you learned here. Also, we have a YouTube channel that's very popular now. There's a lot of people look at our YouTube videos, and this video for this workshop will be published there sometime mid next week. And so that's that'll be available to you as well. And I'll remember to send you an announcement when that comes up so you can refer back to this if you'd like. Good. And Andy threw the YouTube channel information in there. There's tons of stuff, everything from what we just did here to ArcGIS Online we did a couple of weeks ago. We have workshops on working with Jupyter Notebook within ArcGIS Pro. There's tons of stuff there is available to you. Good. Like I said, if anybody wants to have, you can unmute now. We're trickled down to 19 people now. So it's not like too many people that someone can't say stuff or can't say voice themselves. That's one of the things that's a bummer about doing so many online workshops is I really like in person, be able to talk with people. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . .
One question I did have, I put this in the chat, but I know that there's a lot of differences between sort of traditional ArcMap and ArcPro. Is there like a good place to go find like a cheat sheet or maybe some like written resources on it, just like updates?
Oh my. Maybe Shane could answer that question. There's
Yeah.
what I would say though, online, you go to Esri, there is tons of support material from Esri online.
Yeah, I would second that, Sean. And I would say that, I guarantee that Esri has put out some guides to help you with the changes from ArcMap to ArcPro. But often what I find those guides really relate to is the like ArcPy, the Python implementation of different tools. I do think, and one thing that I have found, and I think I could speak for my colleagues, is when you're first transitioning from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro, it's going to be a little painful because you're going to find yourself thinking, well, in ArcMap, I would just go here, here, and here, and I'd have it done. And it's like, when you go to Pro, that's not there. So there is a bit of a learning curve, but once you get beyond that, it does become quite intuitive and easy to use. Sometimes you have to unlearn what you knew in ArcMap, and I hate to say that. But Esri, like Sean says, does have some decent documentation.
Once you do transition though, earlier this week, Andy and I helped someone out that had an ArcMap project that they had some questions about, and I couldn't believe
I think Sean's frozen again, but I think what he was about to say is he couldn't believe how awful it was to work in ArcMap.
Yeah, I get that feeling. I've been trying to transition over to ArcPro.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really strongly think that's a great idea, Chris. It's just, your life will be so much easier.
It will, and the types of changes they've made to the underlying system in terms of parallelization, the 64-bit operating system speeds up so much, and all the new development and tools that Esri is doing right now does not go into ArcMap at all. It's all for ArcPro.
Yeah, so just keep doing it, and you'll benefit. It was hard, but I'm so glad we made the transition.
Great, good. I'm glad to hear that. I will probably be showing up to office hours at some point to just ask some questions.
Yeah,
so thank you very much. This was a wonderful workshop.
Yeah, lovely to see you all.
I have a question. How long are these logins that we got for this workshop like eligible? Are they going to expire? Can we keep using them for a little while?
Are they the training logins you got from Robert?
Yes. Yeah.
They'll work for a while. We in general keep them up and running for people. So feel free to use it for a little bit. And then we can reach out to you before we shut it off.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, thanks you all. And Sean is obviously having a bit of trouble, so I think we'll close this now, but make sure you look out for your email and do our evaluation. We really appreciate it. We appreciate seeing all of you. So this was lovely.
Thank you all.